In this video, I'm going to talk about my process of how I went from being super addicted to video games to feeling like you don't even want to play them anymore. My story and the steps that I took and the steps that you can take as well in order to take back control of your life, including the single best way to quit video games that works for me. And I've tried a lot of things. So we'll talk about that too. And we'll cover it all in this video. So let's jump in. So I used to be really addicted to video games. Like I used to just play them nonstop, especially during school. At first it was League of Legends, then this game probably no one knows called Combat Arms. It was by Nixon. They also made MapleStory. Then it was Hearthstone, and then it was Valorant. Valorant was the most recent one. But I used to clock hours, sometimes even more than 10 plus hours a day. I even have a spreadsheet. If I find the spreadsheet, I'll throw it up here. But the most frustrating part about being really addicted to video games is you want to improve your life. You want to do work. You want to do all these things that you want to do, but you feel like you can't. It got to a point where I felt so hopeless. Like I felt trapped. I felt like I wasn't in control of my life, and I wanted to be in control of my life. There was stuff that I wanted to get done, but it was just so much easier to just load up your favorite video game and play it. And so I went from that to now where I don't even feel like playing video games. Like you can put a video game in front of me, I can log on to like Valorant, and then I'm just like, this isn't fun anymore. And so you might be wondering, how did I get from being super addicted to video games to now where I don't even feel like playing video games? Part one is ask yourself, why? Why are you addicted to playing video games? And there's a ton of reasons for this, but at a very, very high level, if you ask why, the problem is you're addicted to video games because your life isn't great. And if I'm gonna be really brutally honest, it probably sucks. For me, if I look back at where I was and why I played video games so much, it's because my life wasn't great. There were things that I wanted to do and I wasn't doing them. And if I looked back at why it took so long for me to finally take steps and actually do something about my life and stop playing video games, it's because I didn't fully accept this fact. So the first thing to accept is that your life isn't great, but you can change it. And that last piece is really important. So understanding the why is really important, because if you don't have a good enough reason for why you want your life to change, which you can identify from why your life sucks, then you're not going to do the rest of the steps that I'm going to talk about. So find that first. For me, there was a period of my life where I was consistently miserable. And I did a lot of thinking, and I really narrowed down why that was the case. And it was because A, I was living with my parents, and B, my job. I made a whole video on the job thing, but I was like, okay, now that I know why my life sucks, I'm going to figure out how to fix this. So let's talk about that. Enough with the examples. Let's dive in. I'm going to give you guys a short-term solution, which you can apply right now, and a longer-term solution. So the short-term solution here is to quit cold turkey. Like, don't play video games once every day. I've tried a lot of shit. I've tried so many things. I tried restricting the times that I play video games. I tried using video games as a reward. One time I even gave my friend my password. Like I randomly generated a password, didn't look at it, and I just gave my friend it. And I was like, okay, if I decide to play video games, you got to make sure it's for a good reason. Okay. I've tried a lot of things. And the best strategy that I've found, the most effective solution, is just to quit cold turkey. Usually 14 days is enough. So that's like 2 weeks. Fun fact, the first video series that I ever did on this channel, it was just basically me documenting quitting 14 days of video games. 30 days is ideal, but you'll see effects after 14. And after 14 days, I just did not want to play video games at all. So it just kept on going until like 30. I think they say it takes 21 days to make a habit or something, so you can apply the reverse of that, right? It also takes 21 days for you to quit something and for something you don't want to do to stick. And so you might be wondering, how do you do this? Like, what is the best way to quit cold turkey so that you don't want to come back? Because every time I would quit video games, that's a problem I always had. I always wanted to come back. There was always a reason. There was always an excuse. There was always, oh, because of this. Or the best way to do this is to make 2 Windows accounts. If you're on Mac, I don't know if there's an equivalent, but you can probably apply the same thing. Make 2 Windows accounts. On the first Windows account, have the stuff that you do, your school, your general use. The second Windows account, install your games. on your second Windows account. And the secret here is you want to lock your second Windows account with a randomly generated password. So use a password manager like Bitwarden, great password manager. It's free, highly recommend it. Generate a random password and save it on your Bitwarden, because you can't copy paste this. Like if you're gonna log into your Windows, you go into your second account, there's no way you can copy and paste a randomly generated password and put it in. You're gonna have to manually type down what that password is. And there have been so many times when I've wanted to play Valorant, when I've wanted to play video games, and I log into this account, and while I'm like halfway putting in this password, which takes a while, like you gotta type like, 8 @ capital B 4Z, right? You gotta look at my phone because I had my password manager on my phone, and you gotta like manually copy it in. There have been so many times where I've just stopped in the middle of it, and I'm just like, what am I doing? This is not what I want. This is not how I want to live my life. I'm just doing what I know is gonna result in me feeling like shit. So that's the best way to do it. Depending on how severe your video game addiction is, and how seriously you want to take this, you can generate a 32, 64, or 128 character password. For me, I eventually just had to go to 128 because it was really bad. So every time I wanted to play video games, I would sit there and I would manually input from my phone 128 random characters that aren't like words or anything. And sometimes I would get it wrong. So I would hit enter expecting to have access to all my games and be able to play video games for hours. And then it would just be wrong. Incorrect password, you spelt it wrong. Fuck you. and then I would have to enter it again and hit the I button to like not make sure. Anyways, it's the best way that I've found to quit video games cold turkey if you want to quit. Before I move on to the long-term solution, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, but wait, what about all those people that tell me, oh, if you're having fun playing video games, you're not wasting your time. There's that quote of like, oh, well, if you enjoyed your time, then it's not wasted time, right? It's like, okay, sure, that may be true. But if you look at the details, did you really enjoy your time? You might have been on a high because video games, they hijack your dopamine system and all that other good stuff. They emulate a lot of things. So like you might have been on a high, you might have been on an adrenaline rush. So sure, you can look back on it and say that you had fun. But eventually at some point, I just wasn't having fun. I was playing with hackers. I was like, this is ridiculous. Pretty much every game I would have to quit because they were just hackers and you would lose EXP and all that. It's the same with Valorant too. At some point, it just became more of a habit for me to log on and play Valorant than it was to actually have fun. So that's something that I'll throw your way because it's something that I thought about a lot when trying to quit video games. It's like, oh, well, am I having fun? Yeah, I think so. But then I look back on it and I'm like, no, I don't actually think I was having fun. I think it would have been a lot more fun if I was to work on a project with a friend or like call someone, or if I was just to go outside and like do my favorite hobbies or whatever. Okay, moving on to the long-term solution. We talked about the why, right? Which is you're addicted to video games because your life, it's not great. It sucks. So the longer-term solution to this is to build a life that is worth playing over video games. And the core kind of principle to this is in life, you're going to go through suffering. You're going to go through challenges. You're going to go through hardships. Life is not easy. There's going to be things you want, and there's going to be work that you need to do to get there. And more often than not, video games is just a really easy way to cope or to escape or to not deal with those challenges. So you have to pick something that is worth all of this work to do. You have to pick something that is worth the suffering. And by doing that, you automatically pick something that is also worth doing instead of video games. It's like, man, I hate my job right now, but like, I want this, this, and this in a job. It's like, okay, how much does your job take up? Your job takes up more than 50% of your life if you don't count sleep, right? 8 hours of sleep, 8 hours of work, 8 hours of like your free time. Work takes up like more than 50% of your life. It's like, okay, my job sucks. Wouldn't my life be a lot better if I had a better job? Like, okay, is that worth playing over video games? Yeah, I think so. To be not consistently miserable for more than 50% of your life, I think that's worth playing over video games. So that's an example. You want to pick something that is just worth playing over video games. And as much as I would love to give you a 5-step plan for this process, there's so many answers and you know yourself best. In fact, you probably already know the answer. You probably know why your life isn't great. You probably know why you're playing video games and you're addicted to it. And you probably know what you need to do to make it better. And you probably know what you think is worth fighting for and worth accomplishing and achieving instead of playing video games. So you know the answers. You have all the answers. You just need to write it down somewhere, put it at the front of all this stuff, like the video games, that just put it at the front and figure it out. So quick recap of the video. You're addicted to video games because your life isn't great. The short-term solution is just to quit cold turkey. And the best way to do that is just make 2 Windows accounts, use a randomly generated password. The longer term solution is you got to figure out why your life sucks and what is actually worth fighting for in order to build a better life so that you just never have to go back to playing video games. Oh, and I never told you guys why I don't feel like playing video games anymore. It's because I moved. I moved downtown and I solved my problems. The first problem I had was living with my parents. I moved out. And the second problem that I had was with my job. I eventually got a new one and that was better. So process-wise, I found out why my life sucked and also why I was addicted. And I solved both problems and bada bing, bada boom, video game addiction gone. Yeah, so that's why these days I just no longer feel like playing video games. It's gotten to a point in my life where it's no longer a problem. And that is the long-term fix. You just want to get to a point in your life where you're working on stuff and you're just like, I don't even want to play video games anymore. That's it for this video. As a final point, I will leave a tweet here to just really drive this point and everything home. Instead of leveling up in a world of pixels that doesn't matter, start leveling up IRL instead. That's it for this video. I hope you learned something. Go build the life that you want. And as always, I will see you in the next one. Peace. 3, 2, 1.